Hi, Gary Stearman. Glad you could join us for another Prophecy Watchers Daily Update. As promised, we're going to talk once again with Avi Lipkin, author of Islamic Rivalry. ISIS and Iran are fighting for the heart of Islamic identity. This title and subtitle have a huge story behind them. A lot of interesting details in the news today. And Avi, as we were speaking before, you mentioned the Houthis, and they have popped into the news. But months ago, in fact, back in November, we had a conversation. You mentioned the Houthis. I had never heard of the Houthis before. You said at that time that they were going to become important. And lo and behold, they have become important, which validates a lot of what you've been saying for years, I guess.
Yes, well, Islam is divided into two primary groups. The Sunnis are 85% of the Muslims worldwide. The Shiites are about 15%, plus minus, worldwide. But the Shiites are concentrated in the Persian Gulf area, which includes Saudi Arabia and Yemen. So it's 50-50 where the oil is produced. Okay. Now, let's take a panoramic view, okay? And we spoke in the last show about Syria.
Yes.
Syria, Lebanon have Shiite minorities. The French, 100 years ago, decided to put their bets on the Shiites in order to bring down the Sunnis, to control the rest of Sunnis. And so the French and not the British also, the French and the British colonists, colonial powers, decide to call up all these Shiite groups in Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, give them the guns, give them the power, in order to suppress the Sunnis, because the Sunnis were the majority. And the French and the British wanted this minority group to be their watchdogs, to be their allies. So the Shiites were actually suppressing the Sunnis. What happens over a period of time is that Saddam Hussein comes to power, and he's not a Sunni. He's not a Shiite. He's a Sunni, and he suppresses the Shiites, who are 60% of the population, and he slaughters them, and persecutes them, and slaughters them. And Saddam Hussein isn't even really a religious Sunni, but it's about power and politics. So we see, for example, the overthrow of Saddam Hussein with the help of the United States, the rise of Shiite Islam in Iraq by the United States and by Iran. And so the Sunnis, in reaction to that, form ISIS, to push back against the Shiites. And in Syria, we see the same ISIL working to devastate Bashar al-Assad, the Shiites, and their allies, who are the Christians, the Druze, the Kurds, and the Yazidis. So what's happening is we see this massive wave of Sunni Islam now coming down from the north, backed by the Turks. But still, Iran controls the Iraqi part, the Shiite part of Iraq. Iran is inciting in the eastern provinces of Saudi Arabia, which are primarily Shiite. The Shiites are about 10-15% of Saudi Arabia. So who rules Saudi Arabia? The Sunnis. What do? They suppress the Shiites, who are backed by Iran. So you have all this incitement now against the Saudi regime. And then you have the Houthis. Here's another Shiite group that's been suppressed for decades in Yemen by the Sunnis. So Iran is propping up the Shiites in Yemen. So this is a colossal war to the finish, I believe.
So you have the Iranians, who are Shiites, and then there's a sort of an axis of power down the southern end of the Saudi peninsula, where the Houthis are also Shiites.
Right, and they're marching north now into Sunni Saudi Arabia, and actually the Houthis have territorial claims in Saudi Arabia, saying that the southern part of Saudi really is Houthi territory and it should be part of the Houthi Yemen.
So if they claimed that territory and actually won it back, they would have access to a lot of military materials that have been left there.
Eventually oil and military materials, and that puts them within a day's drive from Mecca, from the holy city of Mecca.
That whole place is a powder keg, Avi.
It's about to blow.
I can't believe that things are this hot and that they could erupt as soon as it seems like they might erupt. This looks imminent to me.
I see a pincer of ISIL, which is fanatic Sunni, coming down from the north into Saudi Arabia, sweeping Jordan and Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. And I see the Shiites sweeping in from the south, the Houthis, and of course Iran and Iraq to the east and the northeast. I mean, this could happen imminently.
And we were recently in Israel and had a great time, by the way, with you and your son Aaron. And we noticed, Bob Ulrich and I, one of the things that sort of blew us away was that we could stand in places in Israel and very easily see Jordan. There's Jordan right there.
Right.
If you go down to the Qumran area, you're looking across the sea, and just a very short distance away, here's Jordan.
And Jordan is an ally of Israel.
And Jordan is an ally of Israel.
And Egypt is an ally of Israel. And they're both fighting fanatic Sunni terrorist groups.
And the reaction that Bob and I had was, wow, if Jordan fell to these dissident groups of various kinds, this would put them very, very close to Israel proper.
Very correct. And it would be an intolerable situation that would require an Israeli military response. And I would not even be surprised if the king of Jordan would ask for an Israeli intervention to help him out. And Israel in 1970 did offer the king of Jordan, King Hussein, Israeli backing in a war with Syria.
This is serious.
Yes.
We're not talking about something light here. We're talking about the possible eruption of a major conflagration.
Right. And actually, it's very interesting that Israel is totally coordinated with the U.S. government and Jordan and Saudi Arabia in light of this threat from ISIL.
If you feel like you need a program to tell the players, because there are so many factions, there are so many details, you'll find them in Avi's latest book, Islamic Rivalry. ISIS and Iran are fighting for the heart of Islamic identity. We have this at our online bookstore, and just scroll down and you'll find it there for $19.95. And you order it, it'll be in your hands in a very short time. We have a policy of getting our books, our DVDs, our CDs out to you very, very quickly, and we try to keep that promise to you. It's called Islamic Rivalry. Boy, is it ever an Islamic rivalry. This is an amazing thing. It seems like it seems like Islam is more divided than it is unified to me. It's very strange to me that there are so many factions and subgroups in a religion that considers itself a dominant religion.
And I think, if you want to have concluding remarks, after 1,400 years of wars between the Sunnis and the Shiites, this is the fight to the finish, and the Sunnis are going to win.
The big one.
The big one. In other words, basically Shiite Islam will be terminated, I believe, by Sunni Islam, with the backing of the West. Russia is backing the Shiites, but the numbers are with the Sunnis.
Let's take this thing to its conclusion. Let's say that what you're saying is true and that it actually happens, and repeat that again, and then repeat what would happen after that in your opinion.
If indeed the Sunnis are 85% of the Islamic population of the world and 15% are Shiites, and you have volunteers coming in from all over the world to support ISIL, from all over the world, the Shiites don't have that. The Shiites are concentrated geographically in that area, but they don't have a basis of support in the U.S. like the Sunnis have.
And if the Sunnis were dominant and swept the area,
then there would be nothing in Islam to stop the Sunnis from doing other things.
And what are some of the other things that they would do, in your opinion?
In my opinion, ISIL will kill the king of Saudi Arabia, kill the king of Jordan, kill the royal family. ISIL has promised, it sounds crazy, that to blow up the black stone known as the Kaaba in Mecca, because ISIL says that that's a pagan site that the Prophet Muhammad had no right to adopt into Islam.
By the way, they've been blowing up all kinds of things in the Middle East.
Exactly
ancient cities.
And of all religions.
And yeah, they're trying to wipe out all traces of previous religions. And by the way, in your book, Return to Mecca, and also this one, Islam Prophesied in Genesis, which we also have in our online bookstore, you chronicle these facts, which I don't think most Westerners are aware of at all.
Yes.
So this is an astonishing thing for me as a Western Christian to contemplate, because it might actually happen, and it really could change the power structure of the Middle East as we know it.
This is the direction I believe things are going. And people have to think for a moment. Just recently there was a problem, a technical glitch in Wall Street.
Yes.
United Airlines stopped flying for a few hours.
That's right.
Because of cyber attacks and all this. But think for a moment what happens if and when a war breaks out between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and the Iranians shut the Straits of Hormuz, and ISIL blows up the oil wells, and all of a sudden the only people who have oil will be the US and Canada. What happens to China, Japan, India, Europe? This will be a real cause for an economic downturn of the world economy.
And it all depends on what's happening in the Middle East right at the moment. My reaction to that is I read the Bible.
Yes.
The Bible prophecy in the Old Testament talks about a great Mideast war. And it talks about the consequences of that war as the Bible moves toward the kingdom age, in which Messiah returns and sets up a kingdom which will rule the world, which I believe is actually going to happen. And I know you do too.
By the way, I did want to quote also Ezekiel 29, which never happened until now, that says that Egypt will be turned into a desolation from Aswan, the Aswan Dam, to Migdol.
By the way,
and that the Egyptian population will be scattered all over the world, with most of them going to the United States.
The Aswan area is mentioned by name.
Yes.
By Ezekiel.
Yes.
And, the Aswan High Dam there is huge, as you know. And a lot of people have said that the only way you could possibly destroy it would be with nuclear weapons.
Now, who would destroy it? Not Israel. Who would destroy it? Iran. Iran said Egypt is a Sunni country. If it attacks Bashar al-Assad, it will nuke the Aswan Dam.
Wow.
The Iranians said it.
Avi, we live in truly, truly momentous times. And what can I say? I think we have come to the end of yet another session, and I'm kind of speechless right now. Because if all this actually happened, it'll change the way we live on planet Earth.
Yes.
It's very consequential. Islamic Rivalry is the name of Avi's book. As you can tell, I'm kind of moved by all these things emotionally. As an American Christian, I look at the people that are suffering in the Middle East. I look at the potential destruction, the potential collapse of a global economy, the sea change in everything that we now recognize as standard. We can see things disappearing that have been what we call standard for centuries.
Yes, and that's also one of the reasons why when the U.S. government over the last 60 years is saying to Israel, oh, you have to go back to the borders of June the 5th, 1967.
Oh, yeah.
Forget about it, because all the borders of Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, all these borders are being erased. There is no holiness to the United Nations borders of June 5th, 1967.
Well, in my halting Hebrew, I remember the words of the Psalm, Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And right now, I feel that in my heart.
Amen, amen. But I will say one thing also, with all the turmoil in the Middle East, you go to Israel, you don't feel anything. Israel, I always used to say Israel is like a flower in the middle of a desert. Now Israel's like a flower in the middle of a firestorm. But the flower's, protected by God.
It is.
And it's yours. Israel belongs to the Christians as it does the Jews. That's why I'm forming a Judeo-Christian party.
Avi Lipkin, it's always a pleasure talking with you. May the Lord bless you and yours and your work in the Knesset. And
Thank you.
Come talk to us again as soon as you can.
God willing.
I hope you've enjoyed listening to Avi. I certainly have. It's given us a lot to think about. We live in very, very interesting times. Pray for the Lord's blessing in Israel, in America, and that Christians and observant Jews who are praying fervently, I know, in these times, pray that our prayers will be heard and answered by the Lord. Serious times indeed. I'm Gary Stearman. Hey, we're watching. You keep watching too. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter, or follow us at facebook.com/prophecywatchers. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.